It's my pleasure to introduce our very own Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson.
How's it going?
Great.
Fantastic.
Let's go.
So, not sure where I want to begin.
Let's get sexual.
But, hey, watch your mouth. So that's the picture Dr. Ronnie's talking about?
It's a story to
So, what'd you say?
Is that your new Facebook dating profile?
Okay, service is done. Okay, people, come on.
We're swiping right.
So,
What's in the title, Reverend Ray? What is it?
So today we are talking about sacred sexuality. So my first question for you is, when was the last time you were in church or a spiritual center where sex was the topic? Somebody said it was a while ago. Okay, so at least there's somebody who has experienced the wonders and joys of sacred sexuality as the topic of discussion. Okay, never mind. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today, though. So this idea of what is sacred sexuality and what's it have to do with it. And one of the most important things that we're going to dive into is this idea of pleasure, just to let you know. So what I want to bring out is, so in most churches and centers, there are some things that even today are considered taboo, off limits, unspiritual, or dare we say blasphemous. Are we in CSL Greater Baltimore ready to drop the scales from our eyes of our belief systems and venture into a very specific and select area of spirituality that is most often neglected?
Yes.
Damn right we are.
Yes.
Let's go.
Okay, I heard from like 3 or 4 people, but okay. So, let me ask this question next. So when we're talking about, take the spirituality part off, we're just talking about sexuality. Raise your hand if you are willing. Raise your hand if somewhere in your background, your training, something where you were taught that we should feel shame about sex. Like some element of there should be shame, there should be guilt, there should be something, because on some level sex is dirty. You know, there's certain ways it's supposed to be done. Anything beyond that, it's like that's not, I mean, even if you look at some of the photos from like the 1950s when what people wore, you know, when they would go to the beach, they were fully clothed. Like they were fully clothed compared to what people are wearing today. Like it's vastly different. But there was this idea, this puritanical idea of what it meant to be pure, to be clean, to be godly, to be holy, to be whatever that is. So a lot of us were raised with this idea of guilt and shame and all this other stuff. But I want us to think about sex, sexiness, and sexuality encourages us and invites us into deeper and greater intimacy, connection, union, collaboration, cooperation, creation, expression, and pleasure. But we've got to get, because guilt and shame discourages and blocks the creative energy. So anytime we are feeling guilt and shame, because and this is just me, Is it just you? It's just me. I don't think guilt and shame have any valuable energy. Right? Because you can feel accountable and take ownership of, quote unquote, a mistake without piling on guilt and shame. Like one can feel, I made a mistake and I am going to do what I need to do to make amends for said mistake, without drawing in this idea of guilt, feeling bad about your behavior. You don't have to feel bad about it. Acknowledge that it wasn't the most effective thing and then change it. And then shame is feeling bad about yourself. We already got that down. Like we all masters of that. We already feel bad about ourselves for a vast number of reasons. It doesn't even have to just be about sex, sexiness, sexuality. We feel bad about ourselves just for waking up Monday morning and I can't get this one, it won't lay down. It won't, like, for whatever. And that's like, I can get mine to lay down, I'm just saying. But like we feel upset about and feel shame about any number of things. If we're going to feel guilt and shame about this particular aspect of spirituality, then it's going to block the creative process. Follow what I'm saying? Because part of the creative process involves pleasure. I'm not even just talking about the sex part. I'm talking about creation should feel good. And if we guilt and shame ourselves because you're not supposed to feel good, then you're going to block stuff. Okay? Now, because of the way I was raised and because of all the things that have happened to me in my life, there was a whole lot of all of this. But then, and I'm going to share a certain segment of my library, so watch it, watch it, watch it. So what I did was I got to this point where I said, the only way I'm going to get over this is if I study. So I went and found however many books, and this is just a few of them, however many books I could find about the topic, because I felt too much guilt and shame and damnation and condemnation and about how I show up in the world. And the only way I was going to ever get past that and be able to show up as the true, authentic me was I had to get in contact with myself. Not, shut up. Hey, watch it. Watch it. Get in contact with my spiritual self. Watch it, people. So.
Hey, Ray, it's okay, buddy. Let it out.
Sacred Sexuality. So one of the books that you noticed on the previous page, Sacred Sexuality. So one of the taglines that they use in the introduction, it says, Sacred Sexuality is a unique book that offers insights into how to live ecstatically by awakening your sensual self and sharing this presence with others moment by moment. How many of us on any given day could say we felt ecstatic about anything? Right? There's a few of us, but on an average, not many, and certainly not every day. But why not? Like, why shouldn't we feel some level of ecstatic? And what Dr. Ronnie invited us into, feeling sensual about ourselves every single day. We breathe every day. Why can't we breathe with a sense of sensuality in the breath? Why can't when we walk, when we dress, why can't we get dressed and look in the mirror and be like, oh, shoot. What? Oh. Right? Like, why not? Like, every single one of us should be in awe of ourselves because of how magnificent we are. But we're not. Like, that's not the norm.
What about you, Ray? Do you do that?
Yes.
Sometimes. I heard Eartha Kitt over here somewhere. I have moments, Doug, yes. There are moments. Now, granted, there are far more moments now where I'm in alignment and I feel good and I enjoy life and because Tracy's not home and Ray entertains himself laughing, doing all kind of crazy. Like the number of times I have done the Tom Cruise, da-na-na-na-na-na. You're taking whole records off by myself in the house. Just saying. So yes, there are many times that I am able to be ecstatic about this being that is spirit showing up in human form. But the invitation is, if we're going to talk about sacred spirituality, sexuality from this new level, then it means we really want to invite getting in tune with a certain element of ourselves. Like really getting connected on a soul, spiritual level of what it means to anchor in and feel pleasure, to feel good, to feel ecstatic about who we are. What does it mean to feel ecstatic? Ecstasy, the natural ecstasy. Elation, rapture, entrancement, a feeling of delight at being filled with wonder and enchantment, astonishment. Like that, we want that to be our everyday experience. It shouldn't just be every third blue moon on the 5th Saturday of the vernal equinox. Like it should be every day. So how do we tap into this? Orgasm says, in Sanskrit, it means nourishment.
What?
Right? Now, I want to make a comparison. So when we are eating, since it says nourishment, when we are eating, are we able to eat with a sense of and feel the bliss of whatever that is we just took a bite of? And I mean, like really go there. To the point where somebody's sitting in the restaurant 3 tables over from you like, I want to have what he had. That burger, oh! But it's a state of being. How do we invite? How do we step into this way of being elated? Walking and talking ecstasy. Being orgasmic in whatever it is we're doing. When we're at work. Even if we don't per se enjoy the job, is there something in the job where we can say, something about this job is nourishing me. Therefore, I can find in this. And if it's not nourishing you, can you nourish it? Can you bring nourishment to it? To the point where we know that there are many folks that when they are in the midst of, when they are in the throes of, what do people say? Oh God! Why do we think that's one of the things people say? Because it's connecting us to this deeper spiritual, but we ignore it. We ignore ourselves, we ignore it, we ignore God, we ignore our breath, we ignore the sense of sensuality that Dr. Ronnie led us in. We ignore it because of guilt and shame and because we're too busy to be with ourselves. I've got other things that I have to do. I have other things that I have to take care of. I don't have time to nourish myself. Think about the number of times we don't eat food that we know is higher energy food. We eat fast food. We know it's not as nourishing. We are cheating ourselves of an orgasmic experience of ecstasy and elation every time we do it. Because we're focusing more on just eat. Not why we're eating. I'm supposed to eat and I feel hungry, but I'm not focusing on nourishing myself. I'm just focusing on eating. Get it done. Get her done. Get her done. Just get her done. And we know that there are people who are in relationships who, when they are engaged in that love-making thing, it lasts all of just get her done. It's not about being present with, enveloped in. It's about just get it done. But we do that to ourselves. We are so focused on this element of consciousness where it's just about getting stuff done. What's on the to-do list? When we have a to-do list and a whole bunch of boxes to check, we can't live in a place of ecstasy or elation or orgasmic nourishment. We can't. You cannot serve 2 masters. You can't. Got to choose one. So which one's it going to be? Is it going to be the one that nourishes? Is it going to be the one that uplifts? The one that elates? The one that makes you have a pep in your step and you feel light and you feel purposeful? Or the one that makes you feel guilt and shame? That makes you feel bad? That makes you feel stressed? That makes you feel anxiety? That makes you feel worried? That makes you feel dogged and down and depressed more often than not. Because it's a choice. So Tom Hiddleston says, what's my guilty pleasure? The thing is, I never feel guilty. So if I were to ask, what's your guilty pleasure? Even when we say that, well, my guilty pleasure? Krispy Kreme donuts. And it's not, I'm just saying this. But if I say it, if I engage in the energy of this is my guilty pleasure, then I'm engaging in the energy of guilt. I'm inviting a need to feel shame. Because the moment I go to get a Krispy Kreme donut, because I've already said it's my guilty pleasure, Mo, it's my guilty pleasure. To which she's going to say, well, why are you eating it? Because it's good. And because I now feel the need to hide it, because I feel judged, I'm now going to feel shame. And if I'm eating from a place of guilt and shame, then now what part of my consciousness is now saying, you know that donut's fattening, right? You know it has absolutely 0 or maybe 5% nutritional value. You're going to keep eating it anyway, huh? You know how much sugar is in that? Like, that's enough sugar to last you the entire month. But hey, it's what you want to do. You know you ain't going to fit in those jeans, right? And we hear the negative self-talk. We hear it. We feel it. But we don't ever make it shut up. Because it's what we're used to. We're used to the judgment that comes with. So I say, no guilty pleasures. Just have pleasure. Eat it if you want to eat it. Wear it if you want to wear it. Walk it if you want to walk it. How you are. Last week I spoke at Unity of Washington, D.C., and I mentioned the cover of Lion's Roar magazine that says, for March, it says, enlightened just as you are. Just as you are, right here, right now. That there is nothing that you need to do. And what I said to them was, there is no Sangha you need to attend, no meditation class you need to take, no workshop, there's enlightened just as you are. Which means you are sensual just as you are. You are sexy just as you are. You are powerful just as you are. But you have to embrace it. You have to acknowledge it. You have to take ownership of it. Because we know there are people who have given us compliments throughout our lives. You are such a good student. Yeah, but my mom said I'm stupid. You are so great with the flute. Yeah, but my third grade teacher said, you are so great with the drums, but my teacher said, or my parents said, or my dad said, boy, you better get a real job. Ain't nobody going to pay you to play the drum. And blah, blah, blah. And we hear all this. We don't embrace it until we grow up and evolve to a point where we're like, you know what? I don't care if I make money doing this or not. If I don't do this, I'm not going to live. There's something about me that has to create, has to do, has to move into this space. But once again, it comes down to a choice. What are we going to choose? So when we are creating and birthing and manifesting, if I were to ask you, are you pregnant? The vast majority of us, when you first say it, it's like, well, no, I'm not pregnant. But once again, as Jasmine just pointed out, are you pregnant with a book, a work of art, a song, a dance, a workshop? Are you pregnant with the vision for world peace? Are you pregnant with the infinite potential of creation itself? If you do not feel it, is it time to inseminate your mind with life itself? Is it time to invoke and evoke that sense of spirit within yourself to know that you are infinite potentiality and possibility in the flesh? Every single one of us, whether we know it or not, we are pregnant with that infinite potential and possibility. Every single one of us has right now the power to not only change our lives, to change the lives of family members, to change the lives of a community, to change the lives of neighborhood, to change the lives of city, to change the lives of people in a state, to change the lives of people on a continent, to change the lives of people on this planet, every single one of us. It only takes one person to be the tipping point. If there had never been a Gandhi, would there have ever been a non-violent way of protesting, a peaceful protesting, a way of peacefully being in civil disobedience, knowing that every movement, the animal rights movement, LGBTQ movement, civil rights, all of these were influenced in some way by Mahatma Gandhi. One person. It only takes one person. We know Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's name. His name is the name. One person as the face of the civil rights movement inspired people. We know that there were other people who refused to give up their seats on the bus, but Rosa Parks became the face for that kind of disobedience. One person can inspire. One person can choose to make a movement. One person can Beethoven, Toni Morrison, like the list, Maya Angelou. How many poets has Maya Angelou herself inspired? It only takes one person. And each and every one of us, knowing that that which spirit is incarnating itself in, through, and as us, doesn't get any more powerful than that. So how do we anchor into that? How do we align the energy to be in, like Kundalini, to be in this balanced energy of yin and yang, of the creative process to bring life into being? You know, there's a whole lot of times that we don't engage in the actual creative process where we think idea becomes action, becomes result. What happens in mind, placed in law, becomes form. Put a seed in the soil, it becomes the plant. Like, this is what we know as the creative process. And we somehow think that by default, thinking the same thoughts over and over and over again, somehow I will get different results. No, you will not. So sacred sexuality is about being the creative being, powerhouse that we are. How do we step into that? How do we step into acknowledging that we can change the world? One person at a time. One service at a time. And take all of the other stuff, the guilt, the shame, the doubt, the judgment, the whatever it is, the to-do list, all that stuff, and start focusing on how do I nourish? How do I embrace ecstasy? How do I invite elation? How do I invite joy? Carpe diem, seize the day. Like, find what is going on in the day and take hold of it and enjoy it. Doesn't have to be a source of guilt, shame, and pain. Science of Mind says God has imparted our life to us, placing no limitation or condition that would restrict us. Other than this, our life must be lived constructively, in unity and love and sympathy. I don't like that word, but in sympathy with everything around us. If we expect to live it to the fullest, I believe that every person is born to be creative and to live to the fullest and to be happy and glad and prosperous and whole. But do we? That's what Holmes said he believes. Because if we're not aligning with this, because we don't believe it, or we think it's just some pie in the sky, woo-woo, cotton candy and Skittles kind of concept, then it just stays a wish and a dream, and it becomes metaphysical masturbation. Right? It's about thinking good thoughts to the degree where I'm only thinking good thoughts, but when it comes time to move based upon those thoughts, I'm not doing that. I will daydream about the good that I can do in the world, but I will not put my feet to those thoughts. I just want to feel good thinking. I just want to feel good daydreaming about it. I want to feel good thinking about what these seeds could grow into, but I'm not going to plant the seeds because I'm afraid to plant the seeds. Because the moment I plant them, I've now got to water them, I've got to tend to them, I've got to let them grow, I might have to prune, I got to take stuff off, I got to nurture it. And then when it's time, I have to now reap the harvest. That's work, Mo. I don't want to do the work. So it's easier to just hold a handful of seeds, put them in a bag, and put it on a shelf and say, yep, I've got an apple orchard right there. To which Mo says, fool, no you don't. You got a bag full of seeds. You have the potential for an apple orchard, but you don't have one till you put those in the ground. We don't have a world that works for all until we put the seeds in the ground and make it one life at a time, starting with us. Got to feel good in the process. How do we feel good in the process? I'm not even going to attempt to say the name. You do it yourself? Thomas Shower. Regina Thomas Shower. Sorry, Regina. Pleasure gives you clarity. What? Let's say what now? Pleasure gives you clarity. Say that again. Pleasure gives you clarity. It refreshes and rejuvenates. It keeps you ahead of the curve. Then why do we avoid it? Why do we avoid pleasure? We'll engage in a certain level of pleasure just above guilt and shame, just above what we think somebody might judge us about. But when it's time to drop beneath that and really, really dig in and really nourish and really, oh God, we don't go there. We don't go there when it's time to write a book. We don't go there when it's time to pray. We don't go there when it's time to fellowship. We don't go, oh God, that felt good. We don't go there when it's time to meet a friend. We don't go there when it's time to have a board meeting. We don't go there when it's time to, we don't go there often enough. And so we're stagnant. We're not going to be rejuvenated. We're not going to be refreshed. We're not going to stay ahead of the curve because we're avoiding the very power that brings us right there. Pleasure sends you on wonderful journeys, and you always arrive at your destination ahead of schedule. And amen. Anybody know what those are? Gems, crystals, right? And many people like these, right? Because they're all sparkly, they're all smooth and shiny. But we forget that the thing that made them smooth and shiny was agitation and friction. Like we forgot that they started off rough, but then you had to take the rocks and you had to add grit and you had to add water and then you tumble them joints and then they become smooth. We like to avoid the grit and the tumble. Right? Sometimes we're okay with the water. It's like, oh, it's great. This feels good. My hair needed to be washed anyway. We're okay with parts of the principles. But when it's time to really get down to it, we're like, oh no, that's too much. That's too much reading. That's too much study. That's too much prayer. That's too much money. That's too much something, so I've got to back off. Yeah, but what if? What if that's the very place where change happens? Because it is. If you want to go from there to there, that's where it happens. So what if we engaged in and invited ourselves into the rough, the tumble, and the grit? Seeing it as pleasurable, not something to avoid. Seeing the conflict with family or friend and like, I really don't like conflict, but wow. Oh God. Like, what if? Because that's where change happens. Like, what if? So, prepare ye the way. So, Isaiah 40, verse 3 and 4 says, a voice of one calling, prepare the way for the Lord in the wilderness. Make a straight highway for our God in the desert. Every valley shall be lifted up, every mountain and hill made low. The uneven ground will become smooth, and the rugged land plain. So, for what we're talking about, this idea of Lord, the sovereignty of your life, the stewardship of your life, the one who has dominion and power over your life, you, in this moment, in this breath, preparing the way for shift, evolution, transformation, growth. But you have to be willing to do what needs to be done to make change. That means some things need to be raised up, elated, elevated, and some things need to be torn down and smoothed out. Some of the crooked paths need to be and made straight. Are we willing to do, and that takes work. Are we willing to do the work necessary? John 12:24 says, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, unless a grain of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth fruit." None of us want to die. But if we're going to become a world that works for all, then the old ideas of guilt, shame, the old ideas of what humanity means or is supposed to mean, all of those old ideas have to die. And when we plant the new idea in, we have to be unattached to it. Pray, treat, and move your feet. It's not, so pray, 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 put it down. Nah, I probably should take it with me. Hand it to somebody else and let them pray. Rather than plant it, nurture it, and keep it stepping. Until we're ready to shift the ideas around this stuff, nothing in our lives changes. So when we step into this idea of the work that it takes, like, are we really ready to wax on, wax off? Because the funny thing about this is, did this boy know he was already doing karate right here, right now? No. He had no idea. He didn't realize that the work Mr. Miyagi was having him do was karate training. How many of us, the conflict we had at work, we had no idea that it was training us? How many of us, the relationship that we had no idea that it was training us? How many of us, whatever is going on in the world, how do we know that it's not training us in the same way that Miyagi-san was training Daniel-san in the art? How do we know? And I don't care what the conflict is. I don't care if it's war. I don't care if it's dis-ease. I don't care what it is. What if it is training us to wax on, wax off? It is training us to a different level of being. What if? Because see, Daniel got mad. Like, man, got me painting stuff and sanding the floors and do you think I'm black? I ain't a slave. I'm mad. And he went up to Miyagi and was like, Miyagi, blah, 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 blah. Miyagi was like, whoosh, shut up. Wax on, wax off. Stand up, boy. Wax on, wax off. And then Miyagi is like, okay. And then wax on. And Daniel was like, oh my God, I know karate. This is amazing. But at the beginning, he had no idea. At the beginning, going through, he was annoyed. He was frustrated. He was tired. His body was sore. Because let us remember, that's why Miyagi, because Daniel was sore. He was hurting from the work. But the end result, the result is worth it. An idea held in mind produces after its own kind. Are we willing to hold in mind the idea of what it takes to change and transform our own lives, to become what we say we want to become, to shift the world into becoming what we say we want it to shift into? Because that means forgiving what needs to be forgiven. It means becoming what we need to become. It means letting go of what no longer serves us in a life-affirming way. Otherwise, same old, SOS, but a different day. Frederick Douglass said, I prefer to be true to myself, even at the hazard of incurring the ridicule of others, rather than to be false and to incur my own abhorrence. Are we willing to be so true to ourselves that we speak to family and friends what we do in CSL? No more hiding behind words, no more changing it to make people comfortable, but speaking the truth that we know from where we know what New Thought is. To be able to stand forth boldly, wearing what you wear, looking how you look, singing how you sing, showing up in the audacity to be as magnificent as we are. Are we willing to do that? Are we willing to be that true to ourselves? Octavia Butler says, all that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. And see, we get stuck in the idea of not wanting things to change. We don't like change. But what happens if we lean into the curve and we embrace change? If we step into it and recognize that everything we touch, we're changing. And what if that's not just a figure of speech, but literally everything we touch, we change it in some way, shape, or form. And as a result of changing that vibration, it now gives back in like. Alice Walker says, the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. How many of us, really go about our day saying somebody else has the, the government has the, we're at their mercy. Well, my parents, I'm at their mercy. Or, the man, the whomever, the whatever, I'm at the mercy of. Rather than stepping into it and saying, whoa. If Mary McLeod Bethune could build a college at a time when it was still legal to hang black people from a tree, and racism was a very different creature then maybe I have a little bit more power than I want to give myself credit for and step into it. Scary, yes, but it changes stuff when we're willing to go there. So our call to action. So this week, explore ways that you can foster deeper intimacy. Intimacy with yourself, intimacy with others. Just explore what that even means to be intimate, to be vulnerable, to be transparent, to be open and honest. What does that even mean? Take time to make deeper connections with someone you know. Like whoever you connect with. Is there something about one another that you may not know? Just find ways to make the connection deeper. If you tend to not look in people's eyes when you talk, then at least spend some time and actually see in the window of someone's soul. Find ways to connect. Look at how you set and how you enforce your boundaries. There are a lot of folks who ignore our boundaries. For example, suppose I don't like to be hugged during our namaste thing, but you're a hugger. If I extend my hand and I've communicated, I'm not a hugger. Because I've done this. I've bypassed. Because I saw it after the fact. I'm so used to hugging, it's like, oh shoot, they had their hand out. Shazbot. But if they put their hand out, that's a boundary. It means, thou shalt not put arms around here. Thy hand goeth here. You have done it yet again. It's ignoring people's boundaries. So how do we, first of all, acknowledge and accept our own? How do we enforce our own? And how do we get to know other people's boundaries and respect them? Look for ways you can foster collaboration and cooperation and assisting and sharing yourself with others. Use the process of creation and birth something new this week. I don't care what it is. It could be a biscuit. Something you haven't done before though. Birth something new. I've never made this recipe. I've never made this kind of salad. I've never something. Even if you just go get one knitting needle and some yarn and be like, one! I did it! Oh, God! Ooh, man, I knitted one thing. Whatever that is to bring you in bliss, that I knit one pearl too. God, yes. Whew, that felt good. I don't care what it is, but create something new this week. Examine the ways you have denied yourself the fullest expression of you and what you can do to heal it. So explore all of the ways that you have suppressed yourself, made yourself small, made your light dim, made your voice quiet, made yourself invisible. Just investigate and explore all of those ways and then say, yeah, that time has come and passed, and now I'm ready to heal it. I'm ready to move forward. And then lastly, do something that gives you pleasure. I don't care what it is. Keep it to yourself. But find something that brings you pleasure and partake in it. Emotional pleasure, physical pleasure, spiritual pleasure, intellectual pleasure. But learn how to please yourself. Learn how to step into this aspect of, I love me so much that I can love you so much, that you can love you so much, and then you can love me. It starts here. How do we give ourselves permission to enjoy every aspect of life, seize the day, seize every aspect of our lives, and live it to the fullest? Today's affirmation, glance over it, and if you are so willing to declare this with me, then let us say, today I embrace that which is pleasurable and pleasing. Breathe. And next, when I feel good, I feel God. Breathe. And lastly, I embrace my ecstatic bliss. And so it is.
So it is.